Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So once again, I have with me Mr. Jeff Schroeder of Smashing Pumpkins fame. Um, and you are listening to Shiver and Shake on WRGG 93.7. Jeff, you're one of the best guitarists I have ever seen, hands down. And I'm
Yeah.
so excited to have you here.
Oh, cool. Well, thank you for the kind words. I mean, that's you've been much too gracious.
Well, thank you. There are so many questions I want to ask you, so I'm going to dive right in. If the internet
Sure.
can be believed, you started playing guitar at age 12. I was wondering who or what initially gave you the inspiration to gravitate towards music.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I probably actually had a guitar. I think I had a guitar even earlier than that. Maybe even as early as 8 or 9, like an acoustic. But I started taking lessons in like from a teacher around 12. So I think that's so I could do a few things before that, but that's when the journey really began. My inspirations. Well, I grew up with an older brother, and he's 8 years older than me. So there's a lot of music in the house, and I was born in '74, so you can just imagine that period from the mid '70s to the mid '80s was just a guitar era,
Oh
and
yeah,
and I think and then as I started you know becoming more conscious of what I liked and disliked, you had the advent of videos and MTV.
sure.
And so that period of 82, 83 was just an explosion of amazing guitar
Oh
rock
yeah,
music. So I mean my brother was a huge Kiss fanatic. So Kiss was I grew up listening to Kiss all the time. So Ace Frehley was it. But then like I said, when I started getting into the things that I personally liked, it was Def Leppard and Quiet Riot and Rat and Van Halen and things like that. And and then or even but when you're a kid, you're not as you're not as like attached to genres. So I
yeah.
loved like U2 and things and like Flock of Seagulls and things like that as
Right
well.
on,
So I wasn't I listened to cross musical genres even back then.
right on. Awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
And Billy Corgan of the Smashing Pumpkins once said in an interview that you practice guitar 6 hours every single day. Is that still true?
I do. I do.
Wow.
Even now, I do because I mean not I can't always, but that's kind of my goal. Since I left the band, I actually started studying classical guitar, and so
Awesome.
I spend most of my days working on classical guitar. So I've had a private teacher, and I'm most likely I applied to some schools to start like a master's program in the fall, and I'm not 100% but I'm pretty sure I'm gonna be doing that in the fall. So, but so it's a big commitment, as far as like to the instrument. You got to spend a lot of hours alone in a room
Oh
to
yeah.
work on it. Yeah, so but I do I guess I'm a little bit I love the torture of it all. But so you do have to enjoy spending a lot of time in a room alone by yourself because that's just the nature of the gig, right? You
Yeah.
just is being in the shed and doing it. So yeah, I still do practice quite a bit.
Right on. And so if
Like today, I woke up early and I've probably already got in 3 hours, and so after we're done with this, I'm gonna go and hit it some more.
that is so cool. Practice makes perfect, right?
Yeah.
So if my math and facts are correct, you joined your first band, The Violet Burning, when you were 18 years old in 1992. Is that right?
That is correct. That is
Okay.
correct.
So for those listening, The Violet Burning is a Christian rock band that is still active to this day. And I was just personally curious, as a practicing Christian, did you share that same Christian faith as the other band members or no?
Um, yeah, I mean, I did grow up in that environment, but by the time and this is, I mean, this we could talk the whole rest of this time just about this because actually, a fascinating topic. Um, and I think it's maybe hard to imagine, um, what it was like in Southern California at that time, because I realized like the rest of the country wasn't the same. Is that even in the early 80s there was an explosion of kind of punk and alternative and heavy metal Christian bands, and I know they existed all over, but it was especially vibrant in Southern California.
Yeah.
Um, but by the time I met those guys, and I knew who they were before I actually met them because I'd seen them play, but by the time I met them, they basically were like, we don't want to do like quote unquote Christian music anymore.
Okay.
So we're going to only play clubs and, blah, 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 blah. And so I did join that band, but we didn't do any of that kind of stuff. We just went out and we're just pretty much, I mean, like a regular rock and more like what you two or the Alarm or anything like that was doing, where there was a spiritual dimension to the band, but it wasn't about proselytizing or anything like that. It was just more
Gotcha.
about representing what was going on, like from an inner spiritual perspective,
Okay.
but we weren't playing churches or doing anything like that. No.
Okay. I gotcha.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Not just that, I mean, like I said, I am, I mean, I'm not judging anybody that does any of those things,
yeah,
but
absolutely.
that what by the time, like I said, because they, when I joined the band, I was 18. They seemed a lot older than me at the time, even though they were like 26 or 20, Michael's like maybe 26 or 27, but at the time
Yeah.
it seemed like wow, these guys are just so old. Not so, I didn't mean it like old, but like they seemed like I was just out of high school, and so
No, I get it.
I felt like a kid. I'm like, wow, these are adults, and they're real
Yeah.
musicians. They're really good. They can really play, and yeah. But it was a great learning experience, and the whole reason I actually was able to get in the biz because my guitar teacher, who I took lessons with off and on, was roommates with Michael and Lonnie, the drummer of the band. And so I would go over to their apartment to take lessons. And so I think then Michael kind of heard, he shared a wall with my teacher and heard me playing one day. Was like, "Hey, who was that playing with you?" Asked Dave, my teacher, "Who was that playing with you?" He's like, "Oh, that's Jeff." And so he put us together, and then it was just so cool because um, I had been in some like high school garage bands, literally, jamming in the garage,
Yeah.
playing covers and, trying to write like your own songs. But I mean, I joined that like right in the end of summer of 92, and that was the year I graduated. So I was lucky that I joined the band and then I immediately started playing all you know, the legendary Hollywood clubs at the time,
Yeah.
which was still where the center of the music business was at that
Sure.
time. It's very much shifted now in LA, but at that time it was still the Whiskey, the Troubadour, the Roxy,
Right
and
on.
there was a ton of other places too. But
Yeah.
yeah,
So let's fast forward from the 90s to the 2000s. Um,
sure.
it's 2006, and the Smashing Pumpkins are getting back together. When you auditioned for the band, I know that you initially jammed with the drummer, Jimmy Chamberlain. Um, that was first, but after that, you made it past the first round, you were then brought back to play with both Billy and Jimmy. And I was just wondering if you were given a list of songs to learn beforehand, or if they were just throwing you curveballs from the Pumpkins catalog to play spontaneously on the spot.
Well, when I would jam with Jimmy, see, I think I was one of the first guitar players, if not the first actual guitar player that auditioned. And so um, I think Jimmy was like, "Oh, great! Like, like this, I found my guy." But then I
Yeah,
think he's like, "Well, you know, um, yeah, it can't be that we should audition more people." But Jimmy, I think, kind of used me, which I was happy to help him audition bass players. And so at that time, when it would just be like me and Jimmy and whoever were trying out on bass, we'd always be like, "Hey, let's learn these three songs," and then we'd go in and play those songs. And but when they kind of narrowed it down to like, okay, it's going to be me and then Ginger Reyes, who's now Ginger Pooley, are going to like, we think this is it, and let's bring Billy down and try this out. Um, I think we did have a plan of like some songs to
okay.
to play, and I know we played maybe one or two of them, but I think Billy was like, I want to start throwing curveballs. You know, and so I remember now specifically, he's like, let's just play this song. And it was United States,
Oh man.
which is, is not like a three chord Louie Louie kind of jam. It's like
Right.
it's like a very proggy, and it's in a shuffle, which is at the time I wasn't really used to playing anything like that. And I mean, I was totally embarrassed. I could barely, I could barely keep up. It
Well, and you
was,
probably hadn't heard that song yet, right?
no, I hadn't heard it at all. He just
Yeah.
started playing it, and like, let's just jam on it. And it's got
Yeah.
all these crazy like odd time bars and stuff.
Right.
Yeah, it was pretty. And so I really thought like at the once that was done, I thought, okay, that was a fun couple of months. And now, now that time. So because you have to remember, I was working on my PhD, my doctorate in literature at UCLA. So I had like
Yeah.
this busy life that I had been kind of like putting aside because I would just be practicing guitar all the time, learning all these tunes, trying to play as good as I can. And,
Yeah.
and it was, I mean, it wasn't like a thing where I auditioned one time. It went on for months. Like I
Yeah.
met them, I jammed with Jimmy, we jammed with the other bass players, and they were so cool. Like they invite me to the studio. They were finishing up Zeitgeist. I'd go hang with them at the studio, watch them record. They
Awesome.
really opened their doors for me, and it was awesome. But it lasted months. It was like from the time I met them to the time actually like they told me. I remember they told me and Ginger that you guys got you guys are going to be in the band. It was around March because I remember that week or that same week, we went to a party for Billy's 40th birthday,
Right.
which is the middle of March. So this must have gone on for at least 4 or 5 months before that of because of the holidays and all this stuff. So
Yeah.
I just kind of needed it to either go this way or that way. But after that audition, which was I remember that audition where Billy came to was in December,
Okay.
and it was and so I thought, okay, that's it. Like there's just no no way this is ever gonna I got the gig. That was terrible. And there was a lot of other things too, that like from the minute, that audition started, it just didn't go well. Like
Gotcha.
I'd gotten there a little bit early and set my amp up where I always set it up. He walked in and was like, "Why is your amp there? That's where I put my amp. You need to move it over there." What I mean? Just, if I played a part like a little bit wrong, it was like, "Why? That's not how you play it. Like, why you playing it like that?" What I mean? Just,
Yeah. He's testing you.
yeah. It was, and it was awesome. It was so good,
Yeah.
and just to see like, I mean, you have to really see what it's really going to be like, and but I think that's why, like afterwards, I had to practice a lot just to get up to. Once I got the gig, that was, the audition was like easy compared to once I actually got the gig.
Oh,
Then
I
it was like even
imagine.
a whole other like, okay, that first tour. I mean, my first show with the band in France was 3 hours long.
Oh yeah.
And so it was just, I had never played more than 35 minutes, I think, in my other band. Maybe like, I'm just exaggerating, but maybe like, I was used to play like 40 minutes, 45 minutes, but 3 hours is a whole other,
Oh yeah. And you all were
yeah.
doing that in the entire tour too.
Yes, yes, yeah. So that was just, that was it. It was intense.
Ah,
So that it's funny because really that first years, I mean, I would say even the first 2 years. I mean, I remember everything because, I did it, but I don't have as deep memories of certain things only because I was so nervous and just having to concentrate on playing the whole time that my focus really wasn't on taking in like the kind of like the totality of the experience.
yeah.
So later years I would really be able to stop and go, man, like this is cool. You're playing at Madison Square Garden or you're headlining this festival. Like really just enjoy it and have fun
Yeah.
and have a good time. But those first, I couldn't really have a good time those first couple of years because I was just trying to like, I didn't want to be the one making a big mistake
Yeah.
on stage.
I get it. I get it.
Yeah, yeah.
So during your tenure with the Pumpkins, there were a lot of really great songs that didn't make it onto the albums, like Gossamer, a majority of the Residency songs, as Rome Burns, Circular Change, Make It Happen. The list goes on and on and on. When it came to deciding which songs would appear on albums post Zeitgeist, how democratic was that process? Did Billy ultimately choose the songs, or did you and the other members get a say?
Well, because after Zeitgeist things really changed, like Jimmy left, and so we there was no, I mean, there was no band really for a minute, and then Billy called me up. He's like, "Hey, I still want to do this, and do you still want to be part of it?" And I was like, "Yeah, of course." And so we had to go about putting together a new band, and then it's when we got Mike and Nicole, and um, yeah, so it kind of started with what was it? Tear Garden by Kaleidoscope. Is that yeah, yeah, if I get the name correct. And those were kind of so there were those songs that were kicking around. And I think that we'd even played like a Wada and stuff on that tour with Jimmy, right? On the
Yeah.
20th anniversary tour. Some of those
Yep.
songs were from back, so they made it onto that. Um, but then the album after that was Oceania, right?
Right.
And honestly, there's no other there's not like in the old days where there was all these B-sides and other recordings. Like pretty much the album is everything that we were working on.
Gotcha.
There really weren't there weren't like, oh, should we put this song on versus this song,
Yeah.
but then after that, which was I'm trying to think. So what would have been Monuments, I
Yes.
guess.
After
Yeah,
Oceania. Yep.
yeah. So Monuments, we did go through tons and tons and tons of demos, and at that point it was back to just Billy and I. If
Yeah.
you remember, so it was just, and yes, me and Billy and Howard, we actually went through probably 80 ideas. We
Wow.
just every day just go, we would decide as a collective, like these ideas seem stronger. That's the A pile, that's the B pile, that's the C pile, and so now that you ask me, we did whittle it down in that way.
Gotcha. Okay. Do you remember recording like Gossamer as Rome Burns? Were those demoed at all or
I think there's a demo of Gossamer from before even Zeitgeist.
okay.
Like when they were, I think that was a song that was kicking around
Yeah.
during Zeitgeist. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But there's no official recording. Obviously, on that 20th anniversary tour, we recorded all those shows and
Yeah.
released them, so they do exist as high quality recordings. And I mean, the Pumpkins, even from the day I joined the band, we record every show. Every show is recorded.
Yeah. Uh,
So there's tons and tons and tons of. I mean, there's from like I said, from the very first show I did to this day, I'm sure they're recording still. So,
right.
but yeah, there's I know that I have from that 20th anniversary tour, because I didn't want like every single show
Sure.
but I did get copies of the LA shows because that was obviously my hometown special to me. And those versions of Gossamer and As Rome Burns, I mean, it's just ripping. It's
Oh
so
yeah.
good. Yeah, it's really, really great. Really, really um, credible versions of those songs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Looking back, is there a particular song that stands out to you that maybe you had a lot of influence on in the studio that you're most proud of? A single song?
Um, I think like I would say, I don't know. I mean, I think the album that I'm most proud of just as an artistic piece that I worked on with the band was actually Oceania, which at the
Okay.
time it wasn't an easy record to make for some reason, and it didn't. I don't think we realized like how great of a record it was, because I think the energy surrounding the band was just so strange and weird, and
Yeah.
obviously it's tough when it's basically a new band, with only one original member, but that's a really good record. You know
Oh
what I mean?
yeah.
It's a
Absolutely.
really great record, and so I think that I feel like that. a very good representation of what that band was capable of doing. And
Yeah.
and Monuments was actually a really fun record to make. And because so that record, unlike other Pumpkins records, like I would say, a lot of the rhythm guitar is actually Billy and I playing together.
Yeah.
Like I'm on one side, he's on the other side, especially on the heavy stuff, which no other Pumpkins record is really like that. So
Right.
I think, those records are a lot of fun to make. By the time it got into, the like the records after that, it just turned into a different thing, and we weren't, at the time, on those other, like on Monuments, I still lived in Chicago, so I was there all the time.
Yeah.
Sear, I still lived in Chicago, but James was back in the band, and he wasn't. So we were never all together. We were kind of making these records where we were like people were in different cities and sending
Yeah.
files and stuff. So it was just always different after that.
Yeah. And I'm sure COVID didn't help with that either.
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, autumn, we was all like, me and James were out, we had all working in different places, which is
Yeah.
amazing that we could do it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So years ago, I don't remember when, sometime between 2010 and 2012, I remember reading in an interview that the one song that you really, really wanted to play live with the band was Pennies, which is why I played it tonight.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
don't think you ever got that opportunity. And I was just curious, like, why that particular song out of the entire catalog? Why did that one stand out to you?
Well, because I think it's just I I always just loved that song, and I can't re I know it was on the Airplane Flies High box set, but what it was it on the it's on the Zero single.
I
I
believe
think
so. Yeah.
yes, 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 yes. Because I remember getting the before the box set, getting some of those singles
Yeah.
actually. Yeah, and so I just thought it was such a like a different. It is a side of the band that you don't hear that often,
Yeah.
and then kind of became less and less prevalent as time went on.
I get
And
that.
yeah, so I really like, but I mean, there's a lot of cool songs.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, During your time in the band, there were obviously a lot of highs and lows, but throughout it all, Billy
Mm.
has credited you personally for keeping the band afloat. I think he even said that you're responsible for keeping the band's integrity intact. I was wondering, from your perspective, what is it that you offered or contributed to Billy and the band, for him to give you that
Hmm.
praise and admiration?
I would say, I think that sometimes there when you're like it's your band, like Billy started this band like in his mind probably when he's a teenager, and then
Yeah,
it's been this for so when you're so close to it, sometimes it's hard to see how it's perceived by other people because you just can't. That's the one thing you can never do
yeah,
is 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 hear this music as a fan would hear it.
sure.
Where I had that opportunity to experience the band on record, and I saw the band live a bunch of times, um, as a fan, but then not knowing anybody. So I think that offers maybe like a slightly different perspective.
Yeah,
And so I think I was able to kind of offer that, but also too, I think that because it was a tough situation because we didn't have like Jimmy wasn't in the band and James wasn't in the band and of course Darcy wasn't in the band, but that was never really on the table as an option. You know what I
right.
mean? And so I think that we had different members, and it was, I think at times, like we were just trying things, and I think maybe I would be like, hey, I don't think what we're doing is working,
Okay.
and let me give you my reasons why I think that we should move in a certain direction or try this or do this or. And I think that it came from a place of, and I'd always preface because I've seen the band from the other side, and I don't feel like we're at that quality level. So it's this band deserves to have this kind of elevated status, and there's only one Smashing Pumpkins, and it should be one of the great, and it is one of the greatest bands of all time, and we need
Absolutely.
to live up to that. So I think it was would that I think that was what I would maybe kind of nudge certain conversations or perspectives in that
Sure.
way. If
And
that
no,
makes sense. Yeah.
oh, it does. And not to diminish your hard work and dedication by any means, but really, I would assume you're just a really good, loyal friend as well.
I would like to think so. You know, you know, what I mean, I mean, I loved the band. You know, what I mean, and that's the thing is, I think it's you know, um, hard to explain to people. Like, because even if you say you get in an argument about like a guitar part or a sound, like we always got along great, just as like hanging out in a room,
Yeah.
or going out to eat, whatever. Like it was, yeah, and Billy was super cool to me many times. Like when I was going through, I wasn't I just needed to get out of LA.
Mhm.
I'd been living here, and life had gone in a way that I'm just like, man, like it just wasn't working for me out here. And he was like, dude, why don't you just come live with me for a while? Put
Awesome.
your stuff in storage. And so, I lived in his house for like 3 months, and it was so cool. We had so
Yeah.
much fun, and it was really sweet of him. And and then ended up living in Chicago for 6 years. So
Yeah.
yeah, it
That's
was good.
great. He's a good
Yeah.
dude.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, for sure.
so shifting gears, your
That's
debut
what, the
album.
thing about, like I said, sometimes, I mean, I'm not saying this, but I think, if sometimes people don't understand, like Billy gets a bad rap about certain things, but
Yeah.
like my experience was, that he'd never ask you to do something that he wouldn't do himself.
There you go. Yep.
So it was more like, hey, if I'm working this hard, I want you to work this hard. And so
Sure.
I felt like, and I actually very much agree with that mentality.
Yeah. Makes sense to
Yeah.
me.
And he, and like even in the studio, like if he'd be like, Jeff, I'm sorry that I don't like that guitar part. I mean, he'd go through 10 of his own guitar parts, but that's not good enough, not good enough, not good. So like I
Yeah.
said, he didn't have like a like a criteria that was applicable to you that wasn't applicable to himself.
Yeah. I get
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Your debut album, Metanoia, was released in 2024, and I do want to
Uh,
discuss that in a moment. And it was recorded live in Toronto in late 2021. You made the decision to leave the Pumpkins in 2023 after the release of Autumn. And I'm assuming, based on what I've read, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that you chose to leave the band because you felt like your journey had come to a logical, happy ending with James and Jimmy coming back into the mix. Was there a feeling of like mission accomplished, for lack of a better word?
I wouldn't say it was that. I would just say that I think the like the Pumpkins is a massive machine. It's like a big entity, and but I guess like from a very personal perspective, I didn't start the band. And so I was always just the one, I joined the band, and you
Yeah,
join something that's already has a structure, already has an aesthetic, already has a sound, and all these kind of things. Um and so while it was a great like experience for me, I felt like I'm never going to be able to accomplish more than I'm already accomplishing. If that makes and you have to remember too, I didn't join the band when I was 22. I joined the band when I was 33. I already had a life, and like I said, I was getting my PhD in comparative literature at UCLA. I had goals and dreams and aspirations before joining the band, and like something that the offer to join the band just kind of popped into my life, and I was like, well, yeah, I'm definitely going to do this. You know what I mean?
yeah,
I can't pass this opportunity up. But I think at some point I was like, okay, I got to make some time to follow those other dreams, and figure out what I want to do, because especially as a musician and as a guitar player, it's such a physical thing that you can't play forever. So if
yeah,
there's things that you want to do, like study classical guitar or whatever, like you got to do it while you can still play at a high level. and accomplish something at a high level. So, and I just felt like if I don't do it now, I'm never going to do it. So I just, we had a bunch of time off. I think there was like a 9 months off or something. So I'm like, okay, this is if there's a time, there's never a good time, but if there's a time, I think right now is when to do it.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
but no hard feelings. I mean, I like I said,
yeah.
I love those guys, and I mean, and so it's not, it wasn't about that. It was more about me.
Okay.
Yeah.
And going back to Metanoia, you've mentioned that the music does feel vulnerable at times. Would you say you were in a state of vulnerability, and that's what ultimately led you to releasing that as your first solo project?
Well, it's kind of, I never attended it. It wasn't created with it. Like, okay, I've left this big rock band and now I'm going to make a solo album. And here it is like this crazy experimental ambient record. It existed, I did it while I was still in the band. And that's when those shows were, when those performances were recorded. And so after I left, it actually just, the reason the idea to put it out was I had a conversation with, one of my Yamaha guitar reps, and he was like, "Oh, that stuff, that ambient stuff you did is so cool. You should release something like that someday." And I was like, "Well, I recorded all these shows. I should go and listen to them." And so that's kind of how it came about to actually put a put a cover on it, put a name, like name the name the improvisations as something, and kind of put some thematics to it. But I did kind of like it from a aesthetic standpoint in that it is kind of ambiguous.
Yeah.
It's experimental by nature, and like where I'm going, there's a lot of places and styles and genres that you can go from that. And so I kind of like that idea that it's a bit of a rebirth, and so I felt like it made sense. But I know it could be a little bit confusing if you're like, "Hey, I'm expecting like a big rock and roll statement." It's not that. It's not that kind of record.
Right.
It's not. It wasn't intended to be, and it wasn't intended to be like, "Hey, um, I'm leaving this band, and this is what I'm doing now." It's a very personal record in that way. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that's what I would say.
Awesome. Well, I am going to play a track from it later. But to wrap things up, you mentioned before that you're going to pursue a master's in classical guitar.
Yeah.
Um, but what are your plans for this year and beyond? I mean, I know you have a PhD. Is your dream to teach? Will there be a follow-up album to Metanoia in the near future? Or what's
Yeah,
on your...
so actually I have a new kind of like band project called
Okay.
Inner Magic with my good friend Adam Miller. And Adam Miller was a longtime member of a band called the Chromatics.
Okay.
Yeah, and so we just released our first single called Underground. You could and there's a B-side to it, Feeling Just Fine, which is a Spaceman 3 cover.
Okay.
So, and this band is more like um how would I describe, like it's like maybe krautrock meets Jesus and Mary Chain meets things like Spaceman 3,
Okay.
yeah, so it's very drum machine synth driven but with guitar too.
Right
So
on.
yeah, and then we have a new single coming out, another two songs coming out next week. So, and
Okay.
then we're playing some shows. We're playing a show in LA in May. Uh, at the Lodge Room, opening for this artist Avalon Emerson and the Charm, who just released a new album that's been getting like tons and tons of critical praise. And then we're playing with them up in San Francisco too.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
so
if you come to the East Coast, I will happily check you guys out.
yeah, put you on the list,
Thanks,
for
man.
sure. Yeah.
Well, as someone who fell in love with the Smashing Pumpkins my senior year of high school in 2006, your version of the band is the one that I grew up with. Um, from 2007 to 2022, I was fortunate enough to see you guys play a lucky 13 times, I think. Um,
Yeah. We
so,
were playing that on that Zeitgeist tour. We played Lucky 13 quite a bit.
yeah. And
Yeah.
the role
Yeah.
that you and the band had on my youth and adolescence is irreplaceable. You all were there for me during some of my darkest days when no one else was. So in closing, I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for your dedication to the band during those years and the role that you played in its success. And I know it wasn't always easy, but your legacy for sure will never be forgotten. And I really look forward to your new band and everything you got going on next.
Um, wow, thank you so much. But I mean, thank you for being such a great fan and inviting me onto your show. Like it's honestly, it was the more I'm away from it, I really feel like what an honor to play that music and and for people like you. I mean, that's really why we do it.
Thank you. And thanks for coming
Yeah.
on the show. I'd love to have you on again sometime.
Anytime.
Right
Anytime.
on.
Yeah, yeah, you make it easy. So anytime.
All right. Thanks, Jeff.
Hmm.
All right. Talk to you later.
Okay.
Bye.